I call the December 1st, 2001 WDIC meeting to order. I guess, are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I will welcome everybody. I assume everybody knows each other in the meeting, except for maybe, well, we have people know Renee. He's been in other meetings. And now I'm gonna probably go for the approval for the October 27th minutes. I can have a motion to put that up. Motion by Kate Sings Booth, a second by Rachel Graham. Any discussion, any changes? Okay, let's just have a voice vote. Everyone who wishes to agree with the minutes, say yes.
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 Okay, any no's? Okay, that's been approved unanimously. And so let's get right into the big and hopefully final discussion of the diversity statement. And I'll turn things over to Yana Carruthers to bring up the diversity statement.
Well, thank you all for your work over the last year. I sent another just working draft to the committee. Wasn't sure exactly how we were going to go about this process, but Henry, when we had discussed it, if we're going to have a statement approved by this year, we need to get it done today so we can go to the other committees. If not, we would hold until next year with the process, knowing the timing is as such. And so I will pull open what I sent to the committee the other day. There were, we just process-wise in terms of transparency, committees met over the last year. We've had employee input. We went back and collected all the employee input, met again to kind of discuss what that would look like. Still somewhat at an impasse, as I must use the right word, not at a final decision. So was just asked to look at some other ways we could go about it, knowing that there's nothing is set in stone. And so I sent just a couple of items back to the committee, back to the group for consideration. And I'll just pull these up on the screen and we can go from there and proceed with however the group thinks is best. So I'll share screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Everybody? Okay. So, and is the text large enough?
It could be in presentation mode. Oh, there you go. That's better.
Is that better?
Yep.
Yep.
So option one was the first option that was provided to the workforce. Then from there, based upon some feedback that I had received and some different diversity statements, or not just me, some of the state information that the employees made, I just took attempted to try to merge some of the ideas that we heard. And then the third option was just giving another opportunity to kind of communicate some of these things, knowing that the diversity statement is supposed to be very, very concise, 20 to 75 words in many respects, knowing that the goals and things are actually executed in the policy, the WDI policy, and those things would also be further framed through the diversity strategic plan. So this is where we are, and then I'll just open it up for discussion on how the committee would like to proceed, knowing that ultimately, in order to approve anything, we would need a resolution. And I also talked to Brittany about that as well earlier, knowing that without knowing what the actual language is, we couldn't really approve a final resolution because we don't know what that looks like. And so I will look to you all in terms of protocol on what we can do and how we can do it. So turn this over to the group for consideration and where we'd like to start.
Yeah, I guess maybe we can, since options 2 and options 3 are new, we can have maybe everyone sort of react to how they feel about option 2 or option 3, and see whether that's worth discussing further. And then we can go on from there. So does someone want to volunteer to talk about option 2?
I don't know so much that it's to talk about it, but I was just, could you guys give a little bit of detail about why the changes were made from into 2 and then into 3, just to maybe help us a bit?
Sure. So some of the, and this is just me, and so again, there's no consensus around, so we've met multiple times, right? Probably at least 20 times this last year, if that's a fair way to describe it. And so, so at the end,
20 times.
Oh, I have, because I started with Lisa and Ruby at the beginning of the year. And so what ended up happening was we received some feedback from the employees. And some of the employees were like, some of the language is unclear to us, or they felt like they can understand the change from the current statement, how to reflect the history. Some folks felt like it was, what are the words of what does diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice mean? Why do we say we celebrate diversity? That sounds cliche. And also Rachel and Renee or anybody else who's on here have received the same feedback. So on the document, everybody's on here, and Dr. Clark, as Leslie did as well. So then I was like, well, what are the hot buttons or people feel concerned about? What is another way we get to look at, say, a similar thing, paying respect to our past, moving forward the future. Then the third was just to be much more succinct in how I was thinking about them, and just a much more, to me, in my mind, a direct approach. So in my mind, there are 100,000 ways you could write a diversity statement, and they could say a lot of things. And to me, the most important thing is what resonates with the people, or resonates with this group, and then how we see ourselves as an organization. So that was just an attempt to take 4 pages of feedback and try to distill into 2 sentences based upon the themes that we heard from various places, and the themes literally where we started at the very, very beginning. Like the 4 pages essentially took us through every single discussion we've had about this. We've had some folks who liked it, some folks who thought it wasn't enough, some folks we need to talk about the values more. So every single, like I said, the entire year, the employees kind of encapsulated every discussion we had privately. Is that a fair way to describe it, Rachel? And then we're at the point where a decision has to be made by this committee on whether or not we want to proceed with any language this year, go back in again, or do something different, scrap all the language, or go back. So that's how we came to this, Kate, knowing that it could be anything.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Sure.
Good job.
Go ahead, Larry.
So I sort of thought I was going to participate in the drafting of this, and then decided that I didn't need to be. And now I feel like I want to argue for focusing on option 3. I don't think that either of the first 2 options are clear enough. I think the first option is too long. I don't know what diversity is the foundation of our heritage means, because that's not the case. So I would argue for focusing on I would want to focus on option 3. And also, is this the statement? And are there bulleted things that we commit to because of the beginning statement? Or is this it?
How I understand it, and again, I think that's a group decision, is what I would say. One thing the group has said consistently, they wanted to make sure this was paired with Tompkins County values, so that people could see how the statement aligned with that. But then also in terms of bullets, there's another way to make the policy more succinct. I mean, we have the actual explication through policy, but we could highlight the policy if that you're asking, how do we do that? Because in the WDI policy, it lists the things that are, a lot of things that you're saying are bulleted in the current diversity statement. But the diversity statement as itself is a succinct statement that can stand alone.
Okay. So that's my suggestion, that we work with option 3 and tune it up. One thing I would say is in option 3, through the empowerment of employees and citizens or residents, just because it's not just the county government and the county employees to whom that are the county. The county, even if you're only focusing on the legislature and the departments and the services that it provides and the impact it wants to have on the community, does include working with citizens. At the very least, working with citizens through the broad range of advisory boards that we have. So that's my suggestion.
Yes, and also, Deanna, wouldn't the diversity statement also lead into the diversity and inclusion plan?
Yes.
Okay, so that's another reason for the diversity statement. I guess I'll go ahead and give my analysis. I also like option 3, mostly because it really deals with the fact that as Tompkins County, we provide services. Because all the other 2 are sort of more internal facing, and that's the one that's sort of external that we realize, because I looked at some diversity statements this week, and many of them were corporate diversity statements that talked about sort of what they did and what services they provided, and they connected diversity in the first line, and in the second, third line, they talked about how that impacted what they did. And so I think that also that would be a more forwarding initiative. And again, that's why I like, and also option 3 is the shortest. I think something brief is also better, because again, the feedback we got was that it was that words weren't understood or things didn't know what they meant. And so having it brief also makes it, I guess, better in a way. But we open other comments, other people.
Yeah, I also agree. Option 3 stuck out to me as soon as I read it. And then I sat on it for a while, and I reread it last night and again this morning, all 3. And I like that it's short, it is to the point, and it does take into consideration the feedback that we received. Yeah. And I think it's really at this point, I mean, obviously we need to decide on what the statement will be, but at this point, I think we need to decide how it's presented and how it's presented with the policy and with the plan once we have a plan.
I too would agree that, excuse me, option 3, I think that it would be the best. It's succinct. It helps us to sort of avoid the thicket of questions raised by some about, not wanting, or rather not understanding what the terms meant, for example. And so we don't have to provide a glossary with this statement. And So I think it reflects our intent and what we're trying to convey and where we are trying to go as a county, and in terms of both workforce, but also in our service to the public. So I think, I mean, statements of this sort, I think, work very well when they are succinct and they, leave, I mean, you try to minimize as much as possible, the types of questions that emerged, although those questions are, unavoidable, but to minimize that sort of reaction, knowing we can't please everyone. But I think, we have sifted through this sufficiently enough that I think, option 3 is a good choice and a good option.
I agree with you folks about option 3 being the shortest and the most succinct. And at the same time, something you just said, Ken, is what my concern with it is that because it does not include any of those terms that people found either problematic or they didn't understand, it doesn't get us away from the job that still exists of educating our community as to what these things are that the policy is driving towards. So I think that even if we end up with option 3 or something very similar, we still have the task ahead of us that we should not be thinking we've gotten past of educating and maybe, and this isn't the time and place for it, but maybe we should give some thought as to how do we address that educational component of helping our community members understand what these terms are, why they're part of our vernacular now, and the importance of them in how we live our lives and serve our community.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think that the fact that we don't have those terms in there doesn't mean that we're not committed to
Right.
what they reflect. And I mean, it's just that, the question is whether, and I think we've answered it, that, whether we put that in the statement as opposed to sort of using, the time after the statement is presented and, move forward to break down what these things mean and how our practice and policies and procedures reflect the intent of the statement.
Yes, I agree. And really, the beauty of that option 3 is it strips away all that language that presents some challenges to some individuals. But we should, have this as part of a web page or document or whatever that includes whether, it's a FAQ or some glossary or something, because I don't want people to read this statement and think that the language that was stripped away are things that we no longer are engaged in.
Also, just a note, what I tried to do was, as we tried to not take anything away, because like Renee, you hit the nail on the head, the same questions are still going to be asked. So when we talked about dismantle systemic barriers, if you look at what the term equity means, it's looking at system structures and power oppression. It's another way of talking about equity. Then also we talked about inclusive services for all, or inhibit. So we're talking about justice here in terms of inclusive service. So I was just trying to literally wordsmith the concept into the space.
Great job.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
Job.
Yeah. And so, but I want you to know that the constructs are still there in the statement without using as many words, knowing that, again, if you guys, I personally will not be offended if we hate all of these. No, I mean, I honestly don't, because, literally this job is like playing within a Rubik's Cube, talking about systems and things like that, and just constantly changing things. And so there are so many different ways to do that. I just tried to listen, just kind of like be still with the information and saying, well, okay, bare bones, what is this? What are we trying to accomplish? And also you can only bring yourself and how you hear things to the space, knowing that I'm hoping that everybody's contributions are still coming through. Does that make sense? Because there's been a lot of work on this,
Yeah, no, and you did a beautiful job. Please understand, I think you did a beautiful job at encapsulating all that in that more succinct statement. We know that all those things still stand behind this more crafted, well-crafted statement, but the rest of our colleagues aren't aware of that. And so that's the reason why I raised the issue, which I think everybody, as far as I can tell, is agreeing with me that we still have that work ahead of us.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we're implicit in the statement, our follow-up will be explicit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'll shut up about that. Thank you for listening to me, folks.
Oh, no, you don't need to shut up at all. I just wanted just to say, we have, somebody has at some point, this group has to decide, this is good enough, or we're okay with this, right? So then it goes to the next thing. And if we're not okay with it, where do we go next? And so I'm okay. Oh, Larry, go ahead.
So I want to, along with adding citizens or residents, whatever we want to do with that, I want to add, well, first I want to say something about the conversation that just occurred, which is I don't think we leave words out of a statement because people either don't like it, which is never a reason to leave something out of a statement that you really want to make, and also don't understand it. That just means that we have to do more work to help people understand, and to say to people at some point, if you are not understanding it, then they have some work to do about. So I'm trying to be polite about that, because some of the people who say they don't understand it and don't want the county to say things.
Absolutely.
So I just want to put those out there. And I know there are people who don't understand it, which is why in my whole history of being involved, I've really focused on trying to educate people and trying to give people the tools to do what they want. So here's the thing that I think we need to add as somebody who hasn't, and I think that other people who hadn't seen option 3 until now. I think I'm just going to say what I think the empowerment of employees and citizens to dismantle systemic barriers that inhibit inclusive governance and the provision of service to all. Do you see what I mean? Because the county does two things. One, it provides governance. That's what the legislature and the advisory bodies do. And then the departments and the staff provide services to all. So I don't know if we have to that inhibit inclusive governance and the provision of service and the provision of government services to all. Yeah.
So
I really like that, Larry, because it says that it's not just the duty of our departments. Speaking from working in the legislature, I want to make sure that we're telling, giving the message to our 5 new legislators that are coming in and to the legislators that will be staying, that this is our job too. Because that is, we are a subset, in this committee, and we know that this is not something that is thought about in the same importance throughout the whole legislature, so I think this is a good reminder of that. So thank you for adding that.
you know what else I like about it? That the word government is in there. Because that's like another version of a 4-letter word to too many people.
Yes.
And I feel too many of my fellow community members and citizens want to, talk badly about government and government is an oppressor, and they don't take responsibility and acknowledge that government is us.
Mhm.
So I really like that government is directly in there.
Exactly, Renee. It's easy to point fingers versus, okay,
I'm part of it. Yeah.
what can we do? We're part of it.
Yes.
And what can we do if we don't like it? How can we change it?
Mhm.
And are people comfortable with adding the empowerment of employees and citizens and residents?
I like residents more than citizens because that's more inclusive.
All right. Yeah, you're right.
Leslin?
Yeah, she has her hand.
Thank you. Something about option 3 rings well, but what is missing for me, and maybe everybody else is reading it, is that commitment, that sense of commitment to it. And I don't know what the word is. Centers could do it, but it's missing something there.
Mhm.
So that's the only thing for me. Otherwise, I like it. I don't know how to elevate and amplify
Right.
that
don't
we
we-
are committed to this.
Why don't we say it
Yeah.
That
Why
this
don't
is a commitment.
instead of centers?
Um,
Make commitment there.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about centers that works.
Mm.
You know, you have something that's central, everything
Yeah,
else
Yeah,
comes
eminence.
off of it.
Mhm.
But it still didn't give me that sense of this is what we're committed to. Don't take it out, Deanna. You can leave centers there. I just wanted to share that thought. And maybe somebody, you can think of a different word. Otherwise, it's just good to go the way it is. And thank you, Larry, for your statement before on just because someone doesn't understand a word or, means that you don't put it in. That is definitely an indication that some education can happen and people need to be committed to doing that level of education. You leave out equity because somebody doesn't understand what equity means. And well, you know what? It's time to do some work around understanding it. So thank you for that. And thank everyone for your work on it.
I have a suggestion about how to put committed in there.
Okay.
Tompkins County government centers diversity inclusion and is committed to the empowerment
Mhm.
of employees, officials, employees, and residents, or something like that. Instead of saying through,
Yeah,
say
it's committed to.
and is committed to the empowerment of. Does that work, Leslie?
I have to see it in writing.
Is that what you said? Is it, Larry, did I
Yeah.
capture that correctly?
Yeah,
What you
yeah,
said?
yeah.
I like that.
I do too.
And I think you should add officials, empowerment of officials, employees, and so all parties are connected. Because together, Tompkins County government is, or any government is the officials, the employees, and the residents of the county. Because I mean, to be a little schmaltzy about it. This is the government of, by, and for the people, right? I mean, we're modeled on all American governments are modeled on this idea that, comes from the federal government, which is that it's the government of, by, and for the people.
I am actually not in favor of adding officials in there because
Okay.
officials for me are part of the employee pool, although they're elected. They're
Okay.
part of the employee pool, and I think it reads better the way it is right now. That's just my opinion.
I have
I
to say-
can
I have the
Outvoted.
same opinion. I have the same opinion as Leslin.
I agree.
I don't think officials need to be in there because, we're employees too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And officials starts to sound like well, first off, it's making it longer. And it starts to sound like we're starting to make distinctions and it's getting away, for me, it's getting away from the feeling of inclusion by having too many categories.
Okay.
I just want to back up. I do agree that it's getting long when you start adding in people, but is there another term that can be inclusive of our elected officials and our employees? Because most people do make that distinction. If there's a way that we can encompass all of us, because that's the only time that anybody would say Tompkins County elected officials, appointed officials, and staff are all the same.
To argue against that, though, even though I made the same point you're making, it occurs to me that Tompkins County government can be seen as that first phrase, Tompkins County government can be
The legislature.
encompasses the legislature.
Mhm.
You say that one more time?
I'm just saying that Tompkins County government is the elected officials.
Mhm. Mhm. It's redundant, in other words, to add officials
Yeah.
in.
Right.
But I understand where JR is coming from, but I think it kind of gets to something that's apart from our discussion here is our fellow residents and citizens don't see themselves as part of governance, but we are in a democracy.
Leslie, is your hand still raised or is it from a prior hand?
Is there anything wrong with saying the empowerment of all?
All employees or just of all?
Of all, the empowerment of all to dismantle. So the empowerment of all to dismantle systemic barriers that inhibit inclusive governance and provision of government services. Oh, never mind. To all. Never mind.
Mhm.
Yeah, because we really only have, well, I was just thinking to be totally annoying, we only have the empowerment of all employees. We don't really have the empowerment of residents. But
Well, that's not how I read it. I read it as the empowerment of employees and residents.
right, but does the government have any control over the empowerment of residents?
We do,
Right.
we do indirectly if we prevent barriers to what it is that they need or how they can communicate.
Right, we want to not just empower the employees to break down barriers and be more inclusive, but we want to empower the residents
Mhm.
to help us do that, whether they see things that we don't see or they have some issues that we just aren't aware of,
Mhm.
or they say, hey, this needs to rise to the surface now. We need to listen to that. So I think this puts it in, says that we acknowledge that, we're looking for that, we embrace that, please, and we want to work with you.
Yeah, I
Not
guess the
just that-
advisory,
Go ahead.
no, I guess the advisory board members are not employees of the government, and they certainly help us
Mhm.
to dismantle systemic barriers.
Absolutely. I think that's what makes this committee so great.
And the residents are the ones who vote the legislators in to represent those desires that Ann has just talked about, those needs rather.
And the residents are often family members of our employees,
Mhm.
or work with them, or teach their kids, or
Or their neighbors and go
yeah,
to the church and
it's
so
so
on.
interwoven,
Yeah.
right?
Where
And,
would be,
sorry,
no, I was just saying, where would be, is there any changes? I know you're talking about it, but is there any specific change you'd like me to make to this working draft based upon some of the comments? I want to make sure I heard if there was anything additional there.
I like it the way it is now.
Maybe we could call it option 4, but I'm a fan of it.
I like that.
Or 3+.
Yeah.
Whatever, it's fine.
4 is good.
So can we call it a diversity statement? Can we put a fork in it?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, maybe we can, just wondering whether we need to do maybe just an oral resolution, just approving option 4 as a diversity statement, because we can go to budget, capital, and personnel, which is the next committee. And we can either have them just do a resolution, or we can bring maybe a written resolution to them, just giving our approval of this resolution. So does Brittany have an idea of what we should do?
I just have a question about the reading of this, though.
Right.
There's a lot of ands in this one sentence. So, and every time I read it, it's bothersome. So the Tompkins County government considers diversity and inclusion and is committed to the empowerment of employees and residents to dismantle barriers, and it's just too many ands. We need 2 sentences.
Right.
Do we though, if it's grammatically correct?
To me, I don't see any problems with that. I know there are a lot of ands. You're correct, Deanna, but I'm not an English or where's Ruby? Isn't she our
I don't know where Ruby is, right? She said
our
she's gonna be
English
here.
major.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex sentence, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It is. It just feels like a run on. But you know what? I should even be quiet because that means I have to schedule the next meeting. So this is what you guys.
You're right, though. I can see the red ink from my professors.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm just struggling with the.
Well, I was
I mean, we
wondering-
could put a period after inclusion and say we are committed
Yeah.
to the empowerment.
That's what I
There
was
we go.
thinking too.
Yeah.
Me
There we
too.
go.
Yep. I was thinking the exact
Ding,
same
ding, ding,
thing.
ding.
And
I
then
like
the
that.
county is committed to ...
Or just say we are, because we just
Oh,
said
we are.
Tompkins
Yeah, we
County.
are.
Yeah. We'll
That's
make them-
even more concise.
There you go.
There. You can't get more inclusive than we.
Yeah, so we got rid of one and.
Can we put equity here, please?
Yeah,
You got it back
Yours
in.
initially.
Yes.
Like, I just,
And no,
So-
but I was really gonna be like, oh, we put justice in there at the end of the construct.
I was gonna
That's,
say,
you
where's
know,
justice now?
Where's justice? We're gonna do it as a sentence. Can we just do it then?
And this is becoming much longer than option 3.
I'm just, I'll stop there. But I'm just
It's
saying,
starting to get as long as option 1.
I'm done. I have,
You want to put injustice in here?
No,
I'm leaving. We're leaving.
no, we're not putting justice in.
We're leaving.
Equity and inclusion.
We don't have Jedi without the justice.
Well, also, we're not the last group of people who are gonna have the eyes on this. I mean, I'm sure if Julie Kiefer was still on the legislature, when it came before the legislature, she would want to add or subtract words. So we can, all I'm saying is, we can suggest this and strongly support this, but it's got to go through more processes, and we could just be happy about whatever ends up happening, unless it's really awful, in which case Leslie can, refer it back, ask for it to be referred back to us. But I mean, somebody along the way is going to have a problem with it, and we have to be willing to let them play with the grammar around it.
I think the statement is fine, just the way they, sorry, Larry.
I think the breaking it up into 2 sentences makes it much clearer.
Yeah.
More clear.
Okay,
More clear? More clear?
I see it more clearly.
You see it clearly now that the rain is gone.
Oh
Yeah,
my
one of-
God.
No, the
Yeah,
snow,
No,
the snow is gone.
The snow is gone.
not
Why
for a
don't we do
long
a-
time this year, I don't think.
why don't we do an oral resolution? Because I see whether we have to do something by email. Why don't we just do an oral resolution where someone can move that option 4 is adopted as our new diversity statement.
I'll move that.
Okay, Rachel moves it. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Rand seconds. Okay, any discussion? And why don't we do a voice vote for this, just to make sure? And I'll call out the people. Rachel,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes,
Deanna,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Leslin,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Lisa,
Enthusiastic, yes.
and Reverend Clark.
Yes.
I'm also yes, it passes unanimously. And so hopefully after 20 meetings, we're done with this. And I'll seek whether or not we need to do an email vote, but I think this should be fine.
I think it should be fine.
And if Deanna can stop sharing her screen.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. Oh, there's a lot of you on here. I mean.
And next on the agenda was the celebrations months from Team Jedi. Is anyone?
Sorry. There's my phone. Wasn't you?
Okay. Deanna, do you have, because we talked about the celebratory months that that Team Jedi was going to do. We talked about this at the last legislative meeting that the calendar that Team Jedi put together.
Oh, I guess the only update was, and I think from the Team Jedi presentation, Ann had asked a question at the meeting, and then I resent the PowerPoint that was presented a couple of months ago with the celebrations. And Ann, did you have any questions on that at all? Or do you remember my email? Because I know you probably got 5 million in between that time too.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was Megan was the one. No, who was the Shannon?
Yeah, and it came from me. Yes.
Well, I think, but also Shannon was working on that, right? So Shannon, both of you, so sorry I didn't respond to you. Shannon sent me an email too, right at the same time. So I got all that. So thank you so much. And sorry, sometimes my memory isn't the best. So I appreciate you resending that, and it looks great to me.
So then we will, based upon the feedback we originally received, want to make sure you have that information. We'll use those dates. We'll use those dates and times as a preliminary starter for proclamations and future things. And so we have the dates for next year so that we have a schedule, knowing that we had used the last 3 years of proclamations that were provided. Actually, Brittany, would you mind coming off screen for a second? Because Shannon is the leader of that group, but actually Brittany is the vice chair. So Brittany, actually, who's here, who's working in the clerk's office, that did a tremendous amount of work. And so I just wanted just to say that in terms of recognition. Brittany, you did a ton of work on that. So it would be unkind to not acknowledge the work that you've done. And so I appreciate everything you've done to lead that effort.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany.
Yes, thanks, Brittany.
Thank you. So, so she's been the vice chair of that committee and done a great amount of work. Oh, there she is. Okay.
I'm here.
Thank you, Brittany. And did you have any comments you wanted to add to about the document at all, or before? Because I hate to speak for you.
I don't. I do know that we have a subcommittee meeting scheduled tomorrow at 11:30 in the morning. So I think we're going to go over what we have planned for next year.
And so if we meet monthly or bi-monthly next year, or depending on what happens with WDIC, we'll continue to make sure they're on the agenda, making sure the information goes from Team Deadeye to WDIC, whether a proclamation needs to be written, what needs to happen, or where it's going to go and how that's going to be done. And so, and then if you have other things that you would like to have happen, whoever the chair is next year, whatever that looks like, will follow their lead.
Yes. Okay, Leslyn.
I just want to advocate very strongly for Hershey Day.
Oh.
I'm not a chocolate fan, but it is one thing that brings people together across an organization.
Okay.
So whatever is it William Hershey's birthday? There's got to be some sort of celebration.
Is that today? Is that today?
No, I think it's
Oh.
September, October, something.
Okay.
Brittany, I don't know if it exists in the archives, and you all have probably already done the work, but your predecessor, who staffed this committee, Karen Fuller, did a lot of work in pulling up all these holidays and celebrations. That's where I learned about Hershey that I never knew existed. And so it's in the archives somewhere. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel necessarily. It was probably about 8 pages of different celebrations and recognitions that matter to people. So I just want to put that out there in case you have some time and want to do a little deep dive research. I'll try to figure out which computer I have it on, which of my laptops, and see if I can find it as well. But it's in there somewhere because we had done this before, just trying to figure out what are the things that we should make sure we highlight and celebrate throughout the year.
So
Today
today
I
I
find
saw
it somewhere in the archives.
Yeah.
So today I saw Matt Van Houten walking with a giant bag of Hershey's to his car, from his car. And so that's why I wondered if that was like, is that today? Because, and I said, who are those for, Matt? He says, these are for me. So I was like,
I was just gonna say it's his daughter's birthday today, so maybe they're for her.
no, and they're not for her, because I asked her. I said, are you gonna give those to your daughter because you think she's sweet? Like that was a very nice gesture as a father, He said, no, these are going to my office. I said, okay, Matt. So, Larry, thank you. Thank you.
So
13.
The control freak in me heard Henry say something about the future of WDIC. And so the control freak in me wants to know, is it possible that WDIC will not be supported by the incoming government? I mean, or Or are you just assuming that there'll be a new government and so there might be slight changes to things?
I
You're
know that there's been discussion about changing over committees or deselecting committees or whatever, but I'm sure that myself and maybe a former chair of the legislature will fight hard and long to keep WDIC in existence.
Okay, good. I just, my rather well-developed control freak heard that.
And Henry, I was going to speak to that actually, if I could.
Okay, fine. And
That, so that's what I wanted to, one of the things I wanted to bring up is that I'd like to do something, whether it's a vote of this group that we can pass on to our governing committee and to the legislature. But I would propose that as a group to take a poll. I would be in favor. I am strongly in favor of not just this group continuing. To me, that's a no-brainer. It should be continuing, but then it go back to monthly. There's been a lot of great work, from our diversity officer, Deanna, our JEDI committee. We have Reimagining Public Safety. There's so much to do now. So I think, with COVID, we had to make some hard choices. But because of a lot of different things, a lot of constraints on our time and with staff's time. So I would like to put it on the table that we recommend that this group go back to meeting, or this committee go back to meeting monthly.
Now this committee continues in perpetuity and that it meets monthly. I think is incredibly important. So I'd like to make that slight amendment to what you're saying, Annie. And that this committee has a reporting space on the legislature agenda. This is not your standing committee of the legislature. And so technically those committees don't have reporting, and it was a long, not long, but a good argument was made for the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee to have direct reporting at the legislature. It reports the budget really, but at the legislature meeting, that WDIC can report in the same vein as a standing committee does. So I would like for that resolution we are passing to support that.
Larry?
I would make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
Well, Larry, you're seconding. I'm making that motion.
Oh,
You're seconding.
okay.
Oh,
Liz makes the
I'm
motion.
sorry.
Larry-
I
Larry
didn't
seconds it.
know. I didn't know what. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take.
You're in Leslie's house.
You know I'll take it back. So
All right,
the no-brainer, I'll take it back.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion?
I
Okay,
saw
we-
that. I just want to say I saw that in the chat, Shauna Black, who I didn't realize was in this meeting, right? She's in, 'cause I
Yeah,
don't have all the video.
yeah, she did a thumbs up.
Okay, right. So she did a thumbs up. So thank you, Shauna.
Yeah,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
Or can I? Okay. With the resolution that, with the amendment, the slight amendment, when you're talking about direct reporting line to the legislator, is that a difference than how we do things now? Does that mean
No.
anything? Okay, I wasn't sure. Like, okay, thank you.
Right. It's just that half the time I don't have anything to say because we haven't met for this, but no, but it's basically my exciting updates. Deanna?
Henry, there's always something to say about
Hey,
diversity,
right,
inclusion, and
there is.
equity, whether you meet or not.
Yeah,
There's always
fine.
something to say. You gotta keep it relevant.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, there's Hershey Day added in now. I'm surprised Leslin didn't want to add in Reese's Peanut Butter Cup Day. And maybe that's a thing.
Mars
Milton
Day.
They're made by Hershey too.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Can we have a voice vote for the commitment to WDIC as being a part of the legislature resolution? All that say aye?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, it passes by unanimous vote. I also want to talk about just the thing with the celebratory months that Reverend Clark, I know this would fall in your bailiwick, but if you could basically maybe in fact plan your calendar sometimes around the celebratory months so that, you know, during February we can have something for African American History Month. For June, we can have something for Gay Pride. If you could you possibly do that? You're on mute. You're on mute.
So, yeah, actually, I've been doing that in terms of programming for the last, well, certainly the last year, close to 2, I would say year and a half. I've not hit all holidays or all events.
You're on mute again. You're on mute again.
Sorry about that. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, we've been doing something certainly for Pride Month since 2019, and we could, you know, certainly do that, you know, in, you know, for significant months. I mean, I think, you know, that said, one of the things I've been thinking about, I guess, in that regard, since I think this came up in a prior discussion, is determining how do we, I mean, given the fact, you know, we've got, you know, certainly human rights, but we also have Deanna's position, we have this committee. If there is a more uniform way in which we can cover, there might be a way to cover as many of the, you know, celebratory months as possible, without that, say, falling all on one office or one entity. I mean, maybe there's a way in which we might be able to, you know, think through how we might do that and to ensure coverage.
Okay, would you be open to talking about that, Deanna? about basically getting the group, maybe getting the chair of WDIC, your office and Ken's office to basically cover all the celebratory months?
In what way? I guess what I mean, like, what does coverage mean? Like,
I guess in terms of like if you want to do a program or a speaker coming in or something else like that for Black History Month, that you could, maybe your office could coordinate that, and then Ken's office could coordinate Gay Pride Month or something like that.
Or even, I mean, look at a mix of, say, both programs and proclamations. I mean, part of it, I think, is about, I mean, acknowledgement. The other part, it can also be about programming. I don't think in the absolute sense we have to program for every single thing. I mean, because there's so many things, so many events. But at minimum, an acknowledgement through, say, proclamations. But looking at a way in which this could be done in a more organic way, I think is worth exploring.
and also I would be, so in this role, like either, to me, I would see this role as programming is a part of it, it's more structural. And so I'm being honest, I would actually bring that back to the committee. Like, can this committee put some programs on, you know, like, because I by myself can't just do the programs, you know? And so there's been multiple times, you know, throughout the year where I work on proclamations like this. I'm happy to work on them. And I'm also working with Team Jedi as well. And so I think that we need to have more capacity on this committee to work on some of these things as far as I'm concerned. Because, and I've said this to you before, Henry, in that it is, all of this work belongs to all of us and how we do these things. And so I think it is odd to me sometimes that it comes across as the people of color are always reporting about things that people of color are doing. So I'm just saying, how do we get other people to do some of this work on, who are, and also highlighting all levels of the work. And so I'm happy to do those things. I always raise my hand. I always do the work that's supposed to be done. But at the same time, I'm just trying to hold us all accountable. To what we're supposed to do, because education is a part of that.
Okay, maybe we can go to Leslyn.
Oh,
okay.
on mute.
Rachel? No, she wanted to go.
I would just propose that we maybe meet this committee with the Recognition and Appreciation Committee of Jedi.
Okay.
Because that is something that they talk about and do. So we could decide together what programs, Human Rights is going to do for your programming, and then what other programs we want to do together, WDIC with the Recognition and Appreciation Committee. That makes the most sense to me. We've got more people to do the work and put those programs together, put those proclamations together.
Yeah, I agree. It would be a greater distribution of labor, but also, bringing together folks to think about how we might be able to routinize this, but also, and more importantly, organize it.
Right. JR?
Yeah, thank you. I think somewhere between there, my question might have been answered, but are you saying that WDIC or that the Recognition Committee for Jedi would be the coordinating body? So that's the one thing I'm missing.
Sounds like she's saying both.
Yeah, I'm saying we should coordinate it together.
Right. And then we also can bring in Human Rights too, to just basically, be a group, a small group that basically plans all the events. Okay.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I think one thing that I would like to look at is because how we talk about this in terms of distribution. For example, the reason why I haven't jumped in before, one, just being first year being here, Dr. Clark, when he very first started, he talked about one of his emphasis areas was education. And so my goal was to support, be a part of, show up, sponsor, or support whatever that looks like. And if we're going to change how we go about that, I just want to make sure that that's very clear, because even JR had this conversation. He said, did you do a program for this? I said, well, most of the time I don't do programs in that way. We did Juneteenth this year because we were doing something new, like as an organization. So I just want to make sure those things are spelled out concretely, because again, working with Team Jedi, it's not that they can't, but also keep in mind, this is the one thing I always want to backstop this with, is because this is not their full capacity, like when they do some of these things, often if it does happen, I have to be a part. If it doesn't happen, I still have to do it. So I just want that to be very, very understood as we think about these things. And so Sean asked if there's funding allocated for these events. Yes, Team Jedi does have a budget for some things. It just depends on how big we do it. And also WDIC has a budget that has, that is significant to me, that we should use, I think. So that's all I'm saying, is just coordinate who, what, when, where, why, so that we, the work gets done.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And, Leslie, do you want to speak or?
So I want to chime in quickly because I might have to jump away. It's interesting. This discussion is interesting because, the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee is a legislative committee. Legislators don't necessarily have feet on the ground to do programs. legislators do policy. Out of WDIC should come, you know, policy suggestions for things to happen. Out of WDIC comes the things like the proclamations that should come out of WDIC, and they've always come out of WDIC. When it comes to education and collaborative programming and so on and so forth, that is where employees come in. That's where the work gets done. You are the feet on the ground to do that. And Reverend Clark, out of the Office of Human Rights, the education around all of these issues, the celebratory months that have to do the human rights portions of them, if they were, you know, issues, legal issues that came out, you know, before these things got going. Those are the things that the Human Rights Office, you know, sort of did. A good example is, you know, WEIC said that the county should adopt, you know, as a policy statement, the county should adopt and post the safe zone cards that were going around. It was the work of the Office of Human Rights to put together an educational video so people understood what it meant when you posted the safe zone cards. What is your responsibility? That was the work of the Office of Human Rights to do that, and to also then shop it around, share, so that people know and understand what it is. And that is something that WDIC assigned to the Office of Human Rights as a legislative committee to get done. My wisdom, I'm going to say, on how these things have worked and worked effectively in the past and can continue to work. Deanna, I understand you're a one-woman operating machine, but with Team Jedi, I think a lot of the internal education and stuff for employees, that's where it lies with you all. I'm not at the county every day or whatever, and employees don't necessarily look to the elected officials. The whole peer education process, the setting up of the trainings, WEIC might say, hey, we think it's time for trainings on transgender employment to happen. And we just put it out there, and that's something that then gets picked up by your office, Deanna, and HR, and you make it happen. So I just want to sort of clarify where those lines are, so that the work will get done and everybody's not sort of looking at each other, well, it was your turn or not your turn. That's all.
Yeah, and no, and Leslie, I think that what you're saying makes sense to me. And I guess that's what I'm trying to understand is with Team Jedi, they put together the recognition of information so that they could get the proclamations to WDIC. That was the whole purpose of them doing that, so that they could do that part. And then education piece, like I said, when I started here, Dr. Clark was like, I'm more of the external facing education. There are training topics that we've been working on here internally. But I think my concern is, because I think we're just trying to, talk about the distribution of work. I am concerned about the production and output, about some of the expectations of what is happening. And so that may be a different conversation, but it doesn't feel fair at this point. That's all I can say.
Now, I'm not sure, maybe it is a conversation that needs to happen, because I'm not sure what doesn't feel fair. And I think there needs to be a lot more conversation about what does that mean? What is it that does not feel fair? That's all.
Yes, we can probably have this conversation another time, Deanna, and I understand your perspective. I understand what she means by fairness, but we can have this conversation another time. Anne?
Well, after all those things were brought up, I mean, I was just going to concur earlier comments about having sometime, a regular time of the year, that the committee for the celebrations meets with WDIC. Maybe it would be more than once a year, but at least, get together, hopefully in our January meeting. I'm hoping we can meet in January and start to parse this out and figure out, for this aspect. I know we just discussed, a bunch of different aspects of work and policy. But so I think that's a starting point for that, of figuring this out, who's going to do what, and maybe on a regular basis, so that we don't, for instance, meet just in January, and then, that doesn't give us time to, anybody, whoever's doing it, it doesn't give us time to plan things, especially for events and recognition of events that start right in February. So just trying to figure out, together, how we can, make that happen, and, want to be open-minded that we're might have different focuses each year, because whoever it is doing this, we're only going to have a certain amount of bandwidth and time to do these things. So we might put more of an emphasis on certain celebrations, certain recognitions each year.
Okay. And Renee?
Thank you. I just wanted to add to the discussion that you folks have been having. A couple of things that Leslyn said to me as an employee, just a staff member who's also a member of JEDI. One of the things that really seems attractive or potentially very powerful is the peer-to-peer education that would happen among members of the workforce through these celebrations, and having JEDI, the members of JEDI involved with this, as you folks are discussing, seems to me a wonderful opportunity for we want to have these celebrations and all, but also there are opportunities to help our colleagues and fellow community members understand why these things are being celebrated. Perhaps they're new to some people. They might not be familiar, with whatever it is that's being celebrated. And so one of the things Leslyn said was the folks who are in the workforce don't see the legislators as really being relevant to them. They do see their work colleagues, their work peers, as relevant. And so I think that synergy, that's the word I'm looking for, of having workforce members part of planning and actually carrying out the programming and education that you folks are talking about, is really a potentially powerful tool for us as we want to evolve to a more just, equitable, and diverse community. So thank you for hearing me out. I know I'm not a member of the committee, but I just wanted to share my impressions, and also thank you for inviting me to the meeting today to discuss the language. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to quickly move on to Juneteenth 2022, I mean, and Reverend Clark has an update for us, and we can also talk about getting the committee back together.
Okay, I have received paperwork from the Speakers Bureau for Annette Gordon-Reed, who is a renowned scholar of the Black experience, teaches at Harvard, and has written a book published earlier this year called On Juneteenth. And she, when we're working out the details now for her to be our keynote speaker for Juneteenth. And so thanks to funding that we have through OHR, through WDIC, and through Deanna's office, in the city of Ithaca, we will be the co-sponsors of this event for in June of this coming year. So I am in process of filling out that paperwork, and then, and once that's tendered, then, things will be sealed for her to be our keynote speaker. If you want to get a sense of just how she talks about Juneteenth, I would advise you to go to the NPR website and go to the Fresh Air page, which is the daily program that comes on usually at 7 on WEOS or WSKG in the evenings. And she did an interview with Terry Gross earlier this year after the publication of the book. So that'll give you a sense of her perspective and view, which is both a scholarly but also personal view, because she is a native Texan and she grew up in the context in which in the state where the celebration originated. And so, if you're interested in that, I would encourage you to do that, or to buy the book itself, or borrow it.
Okay. And I should probably state that we haven't had a meeting of the Juneteenth committee recently, and so we probably will. And so if anyone wants to volunteer their time, of the people who are on this committee to work on Juneteenth, I'd be welcome to receive your emails or your notice that you are willing to work on the Juneteenth 2022 committee, because we're getting hopefully a quicker start. I'll probably plan a meeting, I guess, for January, because it doesn't really have anything to do with WDIC, really. Just getting planning going earlier for the committee. And I know, okay, I know that.
Henry, can I ask something quickly?
Sure.
So, and not to knock anything that you just said, but I thought the city of Ithaca and the county, and Deanna bopped me over the head through the computer. So I thought that you, Deanna and Shelley, were sort of the ones leading up the whole Juneteenth thing starting last year.
They
did
it last year because there was a call to duty. Deanna expressed concern that that she was not really here to do Juneteenth, and that Reverend Clark I basically assigned to find us a speaker.
Actually,
and so
it's fine if I missed the conversation. That's okay. You don't have to rehash it with everybody. I can always just check in later. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No, we switched roles. I can just tell you, Dr. Clark, I'm doing workforce reading and discussion program. And I was going to give an update about that next. And then Dr. Clark said he would be spearheading Juneteenth, right? Is that fair, Dr. Clark?
That's fair.
All right. Thank you.
I'm that
brought up to speed. Thank you.
Okay.
I also didn't want the city to be left out, because this was really important.
Oh, right.
Okay. Okay.
No,
all right.
No, the city
will still be involved.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
No,
Yeah, forget me then. Just forget me.
Yeah, no.
That you last one.
No, absolutely. And then also because we focus a lot on the education piece and things like that. And then when I first started, so Dr. Clark had said to me when we started, hey, I think this work is going to come to the CEDO, the Workforce Reading and Discussion Program. So then I have it now. We're working on planning something for February and March. And then as we were focusing on the education and we did a lot of external stuff, Dr. Clark said he would do the Juneteenth. And so I have that one piece, he has the other piece.
Yes, and we're running out of time, but I just want Deanna to also touch base on the Juneteenth holiday, the employee day coming, the staff holiday, and the update on that.
Oh, sure. So Ruby and I met with Jonathan, and he asked us to come up with cost differential information around what that would look like to add a holiday, knowing that we have to go through all of the different contracts for like whether it's white collar, all the different unions that we have here, and then come up with what it would cost to pay overtime or whatever that holiday pay would be, and then also determine whether or not there would be a recommendation to add or subtract the holiday. And so the goal would be able to bring something to you guys in the next year, like, I mean, not next 12 months, but it's in the next couple months, on a recommendation for that, for then whether or not you want to adopt, or WDIC wants to adopt a resolution to make a recommendation to the legislators to, based upon costs or, you know, significance, all of those different things based upon whatever criteria that WDIC believes is important, and then carry that forward.
Okay. I'm gonna change the agenda a little bit. I don't think we're gonna have time to talk about our committee goals at time. I guess I can quickly go for some department updates. If Lisa Holmes has any updates from the county administration.
A little more news on the, not news really, but slight uptick on the COVID front in terms of number of cases, positive, a little over 200. And we are, you know, like everyone else, watching and waiting for more news on the Omicron variant. But in the meantime, our health department is active in terms of doing the immunization clinics for youths at the mall this week, through the end of this week and on into next week. And trying to think if there are other, that's kind of the biggest news that we've been working on to date right now.
Okay.
Thanks, Henry.
Thank you. I'd like to next turn to Rachel Graham, who wanted to say a few things. One about reimagining public safety.
Yeah, I just wanted to commend Deanna on that forum last night. If anyone here hasn't seen it, it was a really great one. She was joined by Sheriff Osborne, Chief Jolly, Harmony from Mental Health, and Michael from Doer. And I thought, as you know, a community member, it was super informative. I learned a lot about the process of each department and how they handle their current response models. And they had great conversation about alternative response models. And it's, you know, through those conversations and sharing data and having conversations with community members that build the bridges that we're trying to build here. And it was really good. And then I also just wanted to raise a concern that I had watching the last public safety meeting. There was a discussion about the shooting incident at DMV, which then led to the search and apprehension of suspects in Cayuga Heights, which then led to a discussion about the correlation between a rise in violent crime locally with the reimagining public safety efforts. And I just found that really disappointing to hear from people who are stakeholders in this work. And I know these committee meetings sometimes feel small and like we're just having conversations with colleagues, but they're public meetings and people are paying attention to them. So we need to be really purposeful in the language that we're using. And I think if people in positions of authority are making statements like that, they should have some data and information to back that up. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to raise that concern and thank Deanna for the forum the other night.
Yeah, and just before I get to Ann, I want to mention there was the Democratic committee held a meeting last night, which Leslin, in fact, emceed about the increased shootings in the area, the increased violence. And I know that they talked about reimagining public safety in connection with that too. And so I know there's a link, and I can provide to people. There's a link that I got emailed today about the discussion. It had Matt Van Houten, it had the mayor, had lots of people on it talking about these issues. So Ann?
Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't able to make watch the meeting last night. Or the forum. So if you could provide links to those, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I also watched the last public safety meeting, as did Rachel. I didn't watch it in real time. I watched it afterwards, and I was, I don't know if I'll have the exact quote, but it was something like, like what else? If it's not because of reimagining public safety, what else would it be? And there's just, so yeah, that disturbed me from a position, someone in a position. So I don't know if this was, that type of thing was addressed. It sounds like, it was of like, why is there a rise, in incidences of shootings and other things in the community. But I feel like, I think somebody did speak out, to that statement, so it didn't go unchecked. But I just want to make sure that we're, anybody feels comfortable if you're in a meeting to do that, because I know I've heard back from the community, even when we don't agree, we don't always say something, and we all need to speak up. It could be any of us, that could speak up. Whether it's you question it, you ask for data, or you just say, I don't agree, or I'd like more information about it, or let's delve into that a little deeper, because the community is watching. And and we are running a government with lots of services, so we need to make sure that we speak out, and make sure that those things that bother us don't go unsaid. Similar to what Larry was saying earlier, with we don't want to not include something in a statement because it make people uncomfortable, and it is hard. And I know I've talked with Leslyn and Henry about this. It's sometimes hard, and we want to make sure we don't let those times go. So thank you for bringing that up, Rachel.
Henry, I know
Yes.
we're out of time, but I have to say this very quickly.
I know.
We're not going to agree with everyone. People are going to have their opinions, and by the same token that you're saying, don't leave things unchecked. I always look for the opportunity in things. It's an opportunity for continued education. In the forum I was in last night, in the discussion I was in last night, there were a lot of people with the very same opinion as well. They were putting in the chat that, if it wasn't the mayor's fault that we have an increase in gun violence, it's because of reimagining, public safety. So we want to use those opportunities to really educate folks on how we are navigating our way towards something that's different and something that is going to be better for our community. So I value people's opinion, as I'd rather them say it out loud so that we can talk about it, rather than try to sabotage a process from behind or underneath when you don't know what it is they're doing. I just want to.
Yeah, and I just want to, I know we're running over, but I just want to also say that it was in fact Sheriff Osborne who said those words that Ann and Rachel are referring to, that he didn't know if the crime went up, what else could it be except for reimagining public safety. I did talk to Deanna right after the meeting. And so reimagining public safety knows about, they knew about his comments. And so I'm sure we'll work on Derek Osborne to make him understand that, in fact, I know that Savante has talked about this, how the violence went up before reimagining public safety was created.
Right.
And so we have, so when you talk about data, that's some of the data. But again, we have a long road to go. And so we're making progress. I'm sure Reimagining Public Safety will be continuing it because I know Deanna's on the case. And then we will continue the long fight that we have of people making comments or thinking things that don't make sense to us.
Can I just
Sheriff
say
is an
something?
elected official.
Yes.
Right. I was
Yes,
getting ready to say
Deanna.
that. I was going to say that because I feel like we're all talking out loud, and I'm trying to work on this program, y'all. So two things. I said to you, Henry, when we had a follow-up conversation, I was not surprised in any of the perspectives, right? Because just to Leslie's point, those are different perspectives. But also, I'm going to choose to think that he was asking a question. If it's not this, then what? He was asking a question. I don't think anything was wrong with the question, right? But then I also, on the flip side of it, said, here's my thing. You don't have to be reimagining. I'm here for one job, to center marginalized voices, to think about vulnerable communities. Vulnerable, whether it's the DMV, vulnerable, whether it's reimagining public safety, whether it's, I'm just looking at you, Kate, right now, youth services, because you're just on my box. So I would say the same thing to you that I've said to him publicly and privately. When you see me in the room, I'm gonna ask you the same question. What are you doing going to center minoritized folks, the 9 dimensions of equity? So if we can get there, I don't care how you ask it, I don't care what you say, and if you're impacting your results, I guess I take it back because words do matter. Absolutely, they do. Be sensitive to that. But at the same time, I do want to say that I can appreciate that the relationship with the sheriff's office in terms of reimagining has significantly improved since the passing of the plan. I will say that we've done work in terms of the crisis intervention team. I will say that we have applied to actually 2 or 3 grants together since that time. I will say that we're working on the unarmed pilot program. Does that mean we're not going to disagree? Absolutely. You know what I mean? Because that's why I call them, to say, hey, we're on the different parts of an issue here. But I also wanted to say one of the things that he called, we had a meeting right before this. And one of the things that they asked about was trust in the process. So I feel like this is a test of what I'm willing to say, just in terms of, one, I'm working for minorities. I'm working for people of color. I'm working for Black people. I'm a Black person, work for everybody. I'm working, but at the same, not period. At the same time, I'm also working with law enforcement. And I keep saying, if we ever want people of color to be in law enforcement, we've got to stop talking about this way, because if I was a person of color trying to be in law enforcement, I wouldn't want to work here because it feels like it's a binary choice. You can be a Black male law enforcement woman, or non-binary, any of these things, and be in law enforcement. So if we want to recruit in, we have to change the narrative about what it is. And so I'll get off my soapbox on that. But it's just, I'm just saying, I got one issue we talk about.
Okay, well, we ran 6 minutes late. I want to wish everybody a happy holidays and a good conclusion to the WDIC this year, and hopefully we'll come back bigger than better than ever next year. And also, this is Leslie's last meeting as, well, no, I guess she's going to be a public person. It's her last legislative meeting. So let's give her a big round of applause and a huge thank you for all you've done for this community for the last 20 years. We cannot repay you for all that you've done.
Thank you. Good luck, y'all.
Okay, thank you.
But I have a question. When you say public person, does that mean you'll be here in January as a public person? Is that what?
Yes,
Nope.
I assume she'll be on the
Okay,
committee.
I didn't know. Oh, okay.
I will not be on the committee. I will not be on any committee for the next year.
Well, okay. Eventually, you'll be in the committee.
I might think about it, but not
Okay.
next year.
Okay.
You can always attend. I mean,
Bye.
I don't like goodbyes.
I'm gonna
So
hold her to the
long,
standard she had me.
farewell, I hate to see you go, but in 2 years I will be back, So there.
Oh,
Okay. Goodbye,
When I came
everybody.
off council, she swore to me to stay off of everything for 1 year, and she held me to it. So I have to do the same for her.
Okay, but for 2023,
She'll be back.
she'll be back. Okay.
Good
Goodbye.
work, everybody. I really appreciate everyone just carrying this work forward. It is so important, and it just it's the core of my being. And I just really do appreciate you all putting the shoulders and elbows and toes and knees and everything to the grease and making it happen. It has to stay relevant. It has to stay centered. It has to stay present. If we're going to make the change we need to make within our organization and within our world. It's very important. And I'm looking at Dr. Clark and others. Martin Luther King Day is coming up. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is coming up. The community members have been bombarding me about doing something on the day on celebration we used to have that is no longer happening. So, maybe the Office of Human Rights and Youth Services and Administration and Veteran Services might just collaborate and do something on that day.
There's still going to be a GIAC lunch, though, right?
Right? The GIAC breakfast. The GIAC breakfast will happen. Yes.
Okay. And do you have a speaker yet?
I had a speaker, and then she decided she's running for governor, so I can't have her anymore. Because I can't be partisan, so I can't have her anymore. The Attorney General was going to be my speaker this year, and she decided she's going to run for governor. So now I'm searching.
Okay.
All right, y'all. I do have to go, but thank you for everything, and happy holidays if I don't see you.
Yes, happy holidays. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.